So, hi everyone. As people trickle in, we welcome you to this kind of breakout session to talk about highly selective admissions. Axel, Philip, do you want to give it maybe another minute so that people have the chance to trickle in? But we will start in just a minute or so. So, just a little more patience. Thanks. It looks like the number has stabilized. So, um, I guess we can introduce ourselves. So my name is Lowell Tillett. I am an assistant dean of admissions at Wake Forest University in North Carolina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Axel. I am an admissions officer at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore.
And hello, everybody. My name is Philip Marabito. I'm an assistant director of admissions with Vanderbilt University here in Nashville, Tennessee. And over the next couple minutes, we're going to basically kind of give you an overview of each of our institutions. And then we're going to make sure that we also save some time for your questions as well. So feel free to utilize the Q&A function of this session. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen. So as you're starting to think about questions and think about things that we're talking about, whether it's individual institutions or just generally highly selective admissions and what that looks like, feel free to submit your questions there, and then we'll take a shot at them at the end. But I can pass it back to Lowell if you want to start with Wake Forest, perhaps.
Sure, absolutely. And let me see if I can get the tech to work here. No, that's not what I want. All right, let's try that. So, hi everyone. I am a Wake Forest alumnus. I graduated in 2006. I've been working in the Wake Forest admissions office for about 8 years. Wake Forest is located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So we're in kind of the northwest, north central part of the state. We rank 29th in the latest U.S. News and World Report rankings. We have about 5,500 undergraduate students. And we have a diverse student body comprised of both ethnic, racial, cultural diversity, as well as geographic diversity. So 48 states and 55 countries represented. I think that 5,500 number, when you're keeping that in mind, a couple things. I think that number feels both bigger and smaller. So smaller in the classroom sense, you can see that our average class is about 20 students. Academically, as that U.S. News and World Report ranking would indicate, we are consider ourselves a pretty strong institution. All three of the institutions that are here tonight are certainly meet that criteria. We are a liberal arts school, and so the classroom will feel personal, but you also have a lot of flexibility. So with the average class size being 20 students or so, we don't have any super huge auditorium style classes. The largest class I took when I was a student was about maybe 36 or so. You can see 45 majors and 60 minors. You actually have the options to pick and choose those as you go. So no student declares their major until the end of sophomore year. We only have one college, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And all of the kind of the basic structure, the bones of the curriculum are, you can see in the picture here, the divisionals and the basics. So every student has to take classes from those broad categories, but you're free to kind of combine majors and minors, whatever you want. You can combine STEM and business. You can combine arts and humanities. You can combine basically everything if that's what you want to do. We are very big into undergraduate research. You can see Savani Saka here, our 2021 Rhodes Scholar. I need to update this slide because we just announced this past weekend that we have another Rhodes Scholar, Alice Hauser. We've had 15 Rhodes Scholars now in the last 35 years, which is pretty darn strong for a school of our size. We're very big into undergraduate research. About 60% of students do some form of one-on-one research with a faculty member before they graduate. That is certainly true in STEM, but even true beyond STEM as well. Sovereignty, just to give you an example, was politics, econ, and Arabic here. And so one of my friends, just to give you an example, did research on the history of the saxophone, and the university actually paid for him to spend a summer in Paris. So research is going to be accessible to every single student. Service is also a huge part of what makes Wake Forest what it is. Our motto is Pro Humanitate, for humanity. We love having a lot of kind of big service events. I actually was doing a service event kind of preparing Thanksgiving meals for under-resourced families prior to this evening. And so there's not one right way to do service. It can be sustainability efforts. It can be cancer research. Wake and Shake, you can see at the top, is one of our two big Cancer Research Foundation fundraisers that we do every year. But we are kind of committed to the idea, and one of the core parts of Wake Forest is the idea of kind of giving back. We are also a Division I school, so we're a founding member of the Atlantic Coast Conference. Our soccer team just suffered a pretty bad loss in the first round of the NCAA tournament, which is pretty disappointing, but we do pretty well for ourselves, all told. Football's having a pretty solid year. Women's golf, #2 in the country. Cross country, top 10 in the country. We are competing at the high level of Division I athletics. So you get kind of the big school feel as well as kind of the personal school feel. And that, in a nutshell, I think is kind of the Wake Forest experience. As far as the application, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Wake is a school, and I think generally speaking, thinking about schools that are more highly selective, they tend to be a little bit more subjective, a little less reliant on objective criteria. We can talk about specifically what that means, but typically speaking, the more selective a school is, the less it's going to be maybe purely about the numbers and more about kind of the other pieces of the application. And so we do have a lot of ways for you to showcase the extra pieces through essays, through videos, through interviews, things like that. So that's about it for me, and I'll pass it over to one of my colleagues.
Thanks, Lowell. I will go next. All right, and you guys can see my screen? Awesome. Okay. So give you guys just a brief overview of everything Hopkins, but I'll spend more of my time talking about the admissions process itself. So just a few stats. We are the nation's first research university and are #1 in terms of funding, which I'll get to in just a moment. Going to be a similar size to both Wake Forest and Vanderbilt. We have about 5,300 total undergraduates, so usually about 12 or 1,300 per class. We also have a lot of international students and represent a lot of different countries. Research is going to be a really big thing at Hopkins. I mentioned that we lead the nation in terms of annual research funding. That's going to be over $3.1 billion per year. And that's across all of our different institutions. This is going to be a list of all of the different graduate schools. Some of these are in the city of Baltimore. Some are in Washington, D.C. Some are abroad. But undergraduate students at Hopkins have access to all of these different graduate campus resources, even as an undergraduate on campus. Diversity is going to be something that we really value as we think about the admissions process. This includes academic diversity, roughly a 1/3 breakdown between engineering, humanities, and behavioral sciences and the natural sciences. It'll also come in terms of race. You can see our racial breakdown here. This will also come in terms of geographic diversity. We have all 50 states in the US represented, as well as over 80 countries internationally. So very diverse campus overall. I also like to point out that figure in the corner. 18% of our students are first-gen students. We just like to be equitable, give those students a chance that maybe don't have that college-going experience in their family. Just since this is an international crowd, just thought I'd show you guys a map of where we are. Going to be on the East Coast, right next to DC. You basically get all of the resources of 2 cities while you're staying in one. We're going to be not too far away from Philly and New York City as well. Happy to talk about financial aid later on. We are need aware for international students. Despite that, we're still going to meet 100% of demonstrated need. We are a no loan institution, even though we are need aware. Thinking about the admissions process, though, as Lowell kind of pointed out, it gets a little bit more qualitative the more selective the school tends to be. So these are the 3 things that we're looking for. I'm more than happy to go into great detail about exactly what each one means. But the main takeaway is that we have a holistic review process, as I believe both the other schools here do as well. And this means that we're going to be looking at all of the different aspects of your application. It's not just going to be quantitative. It's not just going to be GPA test scores. It's going to be qualitative. We are going to read the teacher letters of recommendation. We are going to look at your essays. And exactly how that plays out is going to vary for every single student. Some students, maybe that essay was the most impactful piece. For others, it might be a more quantitative piece like their transcript. But with that holistic piece, it's going to be tailored to each student in the application process. Another thing that Lowell alluded to is that there tend not to be minimum thresholds. That's going to be the case here at Hopkins. We don't have a minimum GPA threshold or testing threshold where we're just going to throw out the application and not look at it if it's below that. It's not going to happen. We're going to look at it regardless. And likewise, there is no automatically qualifying thing that'll be on your application either. There's no magic test score, no magic GPA, no magic extracurricular that'll automatically get you in. Context is going to be the key. We're going to be looking at all of the different parts of that application. Then obligated to give a quote from our first president, Daniel Coit Gilman. Our aim is to make scholars strong, bright, useful, and true. With that, though, I will pass it over to Philip.
Okay, great. And let me see if these slides will pull up here. Okay, hopefully this should work. Okay, so hopefully you all can see my screen. But just to give you a brief overview of Vanderbilt and give you a sense of who we are as an institution, hopefully this beginning shot will give you a sense of what our campus looks like. It's a very traditional campus. It's a very park-like setting. Lots of big brick buildings. We technically are a registered arboretum as well. So a very traditional campus located in Nashville, Tennessee. To give you the highest level overview of who we are as an institution, think starting off with the people that are here and the folks that you will find when you walk around campus. About 7,000 undergraduate students. We have about 6,500 graduate students. So it brings you to about 13 to 14,000 total students on campus when you combine graduate and undergraduates together. We have about 1,600 students in the first year class. That's really driven by the number of beds that we have in the Martha Rivers Ingram Commons, where all of our first year students will live. So that's a really intentional first year community that you'll be able to be a part of with 1,600 first year students. You'll see about just less than half of our students identify as students of color. That's among our domestic students. So that's among students who are coming from elsewhere in the United States. But our single largest geographic group on campus is our international students. So you'd be in good company and coming from another country to study at Vanderbilt. You also see the male to female ratio there. Where we're located in the center in middle Tennessee, so the central part of Tennessee. So you can see we're not too far from other major U.S. cities, and we're about 15 minutes from the airport. So when you're flying in to get to us, you're not going to find that it's too hard to find your way to campus once you get here. The city itself, I think, is definitely going to be a big part of your experience. You probably may know Nashville as Music City, USA. That's going to be a big part of who we are as a community, but actually the single largest industry in Nashville is healthcare. So if you're interested in medicine, it's another great place to be. So there's a lot to take advantage of here, a lot to be involved in. Our city is, our campus is located within the Midtown neighborhood of Nashville. So you can walk off campus in any direction and be able to be a part of different internships or jobs or service opportunities, whether it's going to shops or restaurants with your friends. There are a lot of things to do, and you can walk off campus in any direction and really be in the city itself. And Nashville has that very traditional campus, but amongst the major city neighborhoods. As I mentioned earlier, the Commons is going to be where all of our first year students will live. That's a really intentional first year community where you are going to be in a space that is really supposed to be a Commons house. Our professors actually will live in each of the houses. So you will see a professor and their family that serves as the head of house that will live with you in the building. So really allowing you to have a relationship with somebody on campus in a very informal way and not somebody who's actually teaching you in a class. So you'll definitely find a really vibrant first year community, I would say. And then starting in your sophomore year, we'll have all of our students live on campus pretty much all 4 years. We have some new residential colleges that are coming online in the next year or two, and that will bring us to about 100% of our students living on campus all 4 years. So you will really find a very intentional residential community here, and especially lots of engagement among students, but our faculty as well in all of those spaces. These are the 4 undergraduate schools and the 4 different schools that you can apply into at Vanderbilt. College of Arts and Science is home to 40 of our 70 majors, about 4,000 of our 7,000 undergraduate students. So it's by far the largest, and you'll definitely see a lot of great liberal arts background there. School of Engineering is home to 7 different majors, including our computer science program as well. Peabody College of Education and Human Development is our teacher education programs, as well as our psychology-based human development programs, including human and organizational development as well. That's another really big popular major at Vanderbilt. And then our Blair School of Music is our smallest school, but that's a conservatory style music environment where you can really be a double major with Nashville and be able to study music in a really unique way when you're here. So you apply into one of the 4 schools and you'll be considered in one of the 4 schools when you submit your application to Vanderbilt. So that's going to be another part of the process, at least for us, is that school fit and your ability to demonstrate your fit with the school that you're applying to. Definitely lots of great research opportunities. Over 60% of our undergraduate students are doing research here on campus. We have an 8-to-1 student to faculty ratio. So getting to know your professors is really going to be a big part of what you do over your 4 years. And I think overall your class sizes are small enough where you can really build those relationships. That's why you see so many students end up doing research when they are here on campus. We also guarantee a experiential learning opportunity for every student as part of their graduation requirements. So it's a project that you will do that could be civic engagement. It could be through creative expression. It could be through studying abroad. Really is up to you. It's what you choose to make of this. But this is something that's an individually faculty advised project that you will do before you graduate from Vanderbilt. And every student will do so at any point in their academic career. And you can do it in a lot of different areas that may be interesting to you. So there's lots of flexibility here, but something tangible that you will do hands-on that's notated on your transcript before you graduate. We are the Commodores on campus, and you'll see lots of spirit around athletics on campus and lots of engagement there for sure. We have Division I athletics, and would definitely recommend going to gocommodores.com if you're interested in playing a sport at Vanderbilt. We could talk more about the application and financial aid process in just a moment, but for Vanderbilt, we commit to meeting 100% of demonstrated need for need-based aid, and international students are also eligible for our merit-based scholarships. So the commitments are all the same regardless of whether you're an international student or a domestic US student. Definitely recommend learning more on our website, but I think at this point we want to transition into the questions that you all have. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And feel free to submit any questions that you have in the chat on the right-hand side there. And I guess also to start us off, if maybe we wanted to go around and kind of give a quick summary of the things that we really look for in an application maybe, and what we really would see as an important part of what the application review process will look like.
After you.
Sure, I'm happy to start. I think in terms of what Vanderbilt would look for, we definitely want to see your academic preparation being a kind of the critical foundation for consideration of your application. So we definitely want to see the ways in which you have challenged yourself through your senior year, the ways in which you've taken appropriately rigorous courses for you in your school. We wouldn't expect you to take a curriculum that's not available at your school, but we would want you to really challenge yourself through your senior year, and I think find success in the courses that you're taking as well. So I think that's a big piece of this, is the foundation of kind of your academics and your preparation for college level academics.
So I'll chime in. I think that, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, if we do kind of a very brief thought exercise here. So let's say that each of our schools have 1,000 applicants, and based on our acceptance rates, we have to get it down to 200, 150, whatever that is. The academic piece is going to be like the first thing that we do. If you do nothing else in your application, you want to be able to showcase that kind of academic preparedness. But that's not going to get us all the way down to 200, 150 or whatever that is. And that's where the other pieces come in. And so I do think it's important. My own personal kind of view for this, I think context is more important than ever before in this process. Axel mentioned kind of the contextual pieces. It used to be in the college admissions world that we had a pretty good idea of what your high school experience was. Even coming from an international school, there were some fairly standardized pieces to this, right? You go to school, you have class, you do homework, you are involved in clubs, and that's what that is. And the past 3 years with COVID has really thrown just a massive curveball into all of that, not only in terms of the specifics for what schools are offering, but also in terms of how it's impacted family life and things like that. And so I think that every college has come to grips with the idea that we can't assume that we know what your high school experience has been on a personal level. And I think that a big part of kind of showcasing the other things to kind of contextualize what we're going to see is you being willing to share parts of that story to help us understand your background better. I think that's a big part of the college application. I think it's more important than it's ever been in this process. And I think that's doubly true for schools that are going to be more holistic, who are going to rely less on GPA markers, SAT, ACT markers, things like that.
Yeah, just to elaborate, everything that Philip and Lyle said holds true for Hopkins as well. One question that I feel like I get a lot from students when it comes to maybe that extracurricular piece, thinking past those academics. Again, academically, we're looking for the same things Philip and Lyle mentioned. Should I have more depth? Should I have more breadth? And the answer to that is, it depends. And I think that the reason I want to illustrate this is because it's going to be different for every single student. We want to see that you're having an impact. We want to see, quite frankly, what you're excited about doing, what you do in high school that you just love doing. And if that comes in the form of just doing a lot of different activities, that's great. We want to understand why that's the case. If it comes from doing one activity a lot, that's great too. We want to understand why that's the case. So, thinking less about the what's that you're doing, the list of activities, more about the why behind them, why they're important to you. Those are the things that, are going to make the difference to us as we read those applications.
So this is a great point. And when I started working in college admissions 8 years ago, I was convinced that there was like this magic formula, this secret sauce, right? That, if I did exactly these right number of things and I had this test score and I had all of these things on the side, then there would be like 100% chance of getting in. And that doesn't exist. I'm going to point blank tell you that for any of these schools, it is not so easy as to say, I do this, I do this, I do this, I get it. There's always more to it than that. And it's one of the more frustrating parts about this process from your perspective, is the idea that there is this idea of they're not telling me what I need to be doing to this. But there's not one right way to do this process. It's all about you. We are trying to make an effort to get to know you on your terms here. One of the things that is really annoying, but we see a lot of is students trying to be someone that they're not, based on expectations. And that doesn't help us in this process, because that student is not the person who shows up onto our campus. It's not helping us get to know you better. So I think be genuine. I think we're all, and we all read enough applications that we have a pretty good sense of when a student is actually being true to themselves and things like that. That's a very touchy feely, not hard answer or anything like that. But that's honestly one of the best bits of advice that I think I can offer to you is it's okay to be yourself in this process. You should not feel like there's some mythical ideal student that you have to contort yourself to be, because that's not what we're looking for. There's not that one right answer to this. It's really much more about the context pieces and the subjective pieces here.
And I think that point is a great transition into the question we have here of what would make a student stand out compared to others specifically. And I would totally echo all those sentiments. I think that authenticity is going to be the thing that you can do to really stand out. Because if we can feel like we can connect to you through your application, then you're going to be memorable to us when we're reading your application. And I think that's something that I would definitely recommend when crafting your application, is to really lead with your authentic voice and think less about what you think we want to see or how we may perceive different things that you may choose to put in your application, but really lead with what you want to share with us. And knowing that the context of everything that you share is going to be important and it's going to be considered and help really craft a picture of who you are as a person. I think that's one of the big things that you can definitely do to stand out, is lead with your authentic self.
Yeah, there's another question, which is going to be about essays and, how do you convey, who you are in those essays? And I think that it's important to think about, the different purposes of the different parts of your application. You have a transcript, the goal is to learn about the classes from that. You have teacher letters, they provide insight to who you are. The activities list literally lists your activities. You have a limited amount of space overall in your application to tell us who you are. So utilizing your essays to essentially repeat the list of activities that you already gave us in the application isn't going to be the most efficient use of the essay. Being able to learn about who you are, learn something that we haven't necessarily seen elsewhere in the application, to utilize the qualitative aspect of the essay is going to be just much more efficient use of your application overall. So, in describing who you are, just make sure that you're answering the prompts. Make sure that you're genuine, and as long as you follow those two things, it's going to be an informative essay. I will note on our website for Hopkins, we do have virtual workshops for essays. These are helpful for any school. And so that's going to be another resource that you can utilize specifically when it comes to essays.
And I also see a question here about athletics as well, and how that process would look. It will probably be very specific by school, and I would say specific by the team and the coaches that you're working with in terms of the athletic teams that you're considering. So definitely would follow the coach's lead if you're in conversation with coaches at, I think, any of the schools that you're looking at, whether it's Division 1 or 2 or 3. Really work with those coaches individually. Do know that you're going to have to ultimately apply to the school that you are intending to go to. So you definitely want to still take seriously all of the application process and all of the pieces that will go into that, because you will submit your application. But the process may have a different timeline, or may have different factors that you can have a conversation with coaches of individual programs. So it'll depend on school, depend on the division that you're looking to play a sport. But that's kind of generally what I would say when you're thinking about athletics and admissions to U.S. universities.
Yeah, just one quick note about athletics. Other two schools here are both Division 1 schools, which means athletics is just going to be a bigger part of the community. It'll also just functionally work different for recruited athletes compared to Hopkins, which is going to be Division 3 for most of our sports. Hopkins is just a little bit weird. We're Division 1 for lacrosse, but only for lacrosse. And we're going to be Division III for everything else.
I think that actually leads me to maybe a good wrapping up point to this, which is that take the time to know every school differently. Like part of the great part of this process from your perspective, these are all different schools and they're all really, really good schools. And so the idea that there's not really going to be one right answer. This is a very subjective process from your perspective. And Wake and Vanderbilt and Johns Hopkins are all going to offer very, very different kind of experiences. And some of them will work better for you and some of them won't. And none of us are going to lose sleep if you decide that our school isn't the right fit for you. But you need to put in the effort for that. You need to understand that it's not just about the rankings that you see. It's about particular programs. It's about the feel of campus. Do I want an urban environment? Do I want a more rural environment? All of those little details that are going to contribute to your collegiate experience. It's an exciting time because it's like window shopping. You have all of these different options available to you. And just based on where you live and the time in the early 21st century, you can have a ton of great, but also very, very different options available to you. And so take that time, do your research here, get to know all of the different schools' websites, sign up for mailing lists, reach out potentially to your admissions officers for who you are. But get that information so that you can make good decisions for yourself, because everything that we've said is kind of specific to our institutions. And this is 3 schools, and there are a lot more highly selective schools out there that are going to do things completely differently. So you are going to need to put in some effort on your part. There's not kind of shortcuts to this. But I think if you do that, it's part of the fun of this process and getting to know and kind of plan your future and get excited for it. So that would be my last bit of advice for you, is to kind of do your research, talk to your counselors, talk to the expert, talk to your parents and things like that.
I dropped the link for Hopkins admissions website in the chat. You guys are welcome to do the same for your schools, just so that you can check out each of our websites. Like Lowell said, even if we do have some similarities here and there, we're going to be different schools. So it's going to be helpful to get to know each of us. But thank you all for coming.